Good morning, and welcome to another episode of A Conversation with Father Orsi. I'm BC Cloutier, Chairman of Action for Life, and this is my friend and priest, Father Michael Orsi.
Oh my gosh. And co-conspirator.
Well, okay. Doing all right today, Father?
So far, so good.
It's the cool weather is coming finally, and it's a nice time of year.
It is. It really is a lovely time of the year. You know, you see the pumpkins and you see the turkeys, and you look forward to Santa Claus. I mean, a lot of nice stuff.
I wanted to talk today, Father, about something that we Catholics hear about periodically, but I'm not sure that a lot of us in the pews actually know what the meaning of the word synodality actually is. Mm-hmm. Now, the official definition of synodality is it refers to the involvement and participation of the whole people of God in the life and mission of the Church. The Church's dicastery for promoting Christian unity. What's a dicastery?
Well, it's a department.
Okay.
A department.
So the Church's dicastery of promoting Christian unity notes that the term synodality broadly refers to the active participation of all the faithful in the life and mission of the Church. That's a mouthful, Father.
It is.
So let's talk about synodality. What is...
Okay. Just let's take the word itself. And it comes from a Greek root, sine and hode. It means together walking, okay? And I would say we're going to, clean it up for you, walking together, okay? Now, it comes out of a term that was used quite often in the Second Vatican Council. That was 1962 to 68. And it was called, oftentimes, we are the people of God. And it has a sense of the people of God walking together toward Christ to heaven. Okay? That's where the idea comes from. Now, there have been synods in the Church in the past, many synods, and usually it was a meeting of bishops. And the bishops would meet at different times, at different places, for different reasons on different topics. For the most part, the idea of synod remained with the eastern part of the Church. Okay, so we have the Orthodox churches would have their synods, and I would say also the Eastern Rite churches would have their synods. What it is a smaller gathering of people that can come together to discuss issues that were pertinent to a certain time period or to certain problems that had arisen in the Church.
Today, by the way, Lutherans have there are 3 synods.
Right, they have their synods. So it's not something that is foreign to Catholicism or Christianity as a whole. However, with the Western Church, the idea of synod began to die out after the split with the Greek Orthodox in the 11th century. And a term we're more familiar with is the term a council, okay? An ecumenical council. So the Church, since practically its beginning with the Council of Jerusalem, and then throughout history, would have a council from time to time, but that would be usually a worldwide event, where bishops from a large part of an area would get together. So in the early Church, and we would have the Council of Nicaea, the Council of Constantinople, the Council of Nicaea, the Council of Chalcedon. These are the early councils of the Church. And we had, later on, we would have the Council of Trent, the 16th century. Certainly we had Vatican I, Council of Vatican I, and that was in 1868 to 70. And then, of course, we had the Second Vatican Council. But this is a worldwide gathering of bishops that would come together to discuss important issues pertaining to the church. And then usually they would make statements, whether it be on liturgy or on doctrine. These are the reasons why a council would get together. And then the Pope would have to sign off on a council. Okay? Now, a synod is somewhat different insofar as it's not ecumenical or worldwide, unless the Pope wants it to be, that way. But usually it's not there to define any major issue, but it's a place for discussion. And that means, like we said earlier, walking together, and it's a place also of listening. So that's one of the big terms you're going to hear today, that the church is a listening church. And in the council, you would usually have a teaching church. Okay? So we call it ecclesia docens, which is a teaching church, and ecclesia dicens, a listening church. Maybe they have that backwards, but you would have docens is teaching, teaching, and ecclesia dicens, it's a speaking to each other church, and then coming to some kind of conclusion as to what was discussed, and then it should be passed on to the different offices in the Vatican, and ultimately the Pope has to be the one that says, I'm going to address these issues, or I'm not going to. He could take it and say, thank you very much. Or he could say, I'm going to take a look at this. I'm going to make a statement about that. So it could have wide implications. It could have no implications. But once again, it's up to the Pope to decide what he wants to take from these, and I'm going to call it these listening sessions. Now, what's different about what's going on now, this synod on synodality, is this. It's met for over 3 years, and it's not just bishops, but the Pope has invited religious and lay people to take part in these discussions as to what are the issues that are concerning God's people, and then to make recommendations to the Pope. So I believe it ends in October. The Pope receives the working document, and then he decides as which ones he wants to address, which ones he doesn't want to address, and how he wants to address it. Mm-hmm. It can come in the form of a papal letter. It can come in the form of an encyclical. It could come in the form of motu proprio. I'm going to issue this on my own. I'm just going to do this because I think this is the right thing to do. So there are various ways that he can speak as to what took place, as to what he has received from these meetings, if you will. And there are different levels of documents that can be issued with, have a different weight considering the type of document that it is. So it could be a letter. It could be an apostolic exhortation. It can be an encyclical. So it varies, the weight of the document and what he says.
I guess we'll have to wait and find out.
We'll have to wait and find out. I mean, what you have here, and this is something that people have been discussing, what is the end result? Mm-hmm. And we're talking about a synod on synodality. It would seem that the goal of a synod on synodality is that there would be ongoing synods, and there have been numerous synods since Vatican II. John Paul II called a synod on the family. So you would have different topics that were given to the synod for discussion. Synod on vocations, say. A synod on the church in South America. Synod on the church in Africa. So they would talk about these things. This is different insofar as it's not a specific topic. It's not a short period of time. It's quite a long period of time. And what else is important is, what is the end goal of this? So, first of all, you're looking for smaller meetings, and we also know that there has been an ongoing synodal movement in Germany, so that could different areas of the world or different places where the church is discussing issues, local governance. Could that be what a synod would do? A local governing.
We're going down a rabbit hole here, Father. Let's take a break.
Okay.
We'll be back right after this. But for the moment, I'd like to talk to you about the expense of airing this program. You know, many people don't realize how expensive it is to produce this program and to get it on the air. Would you care to guess? It's about $3,000 per week. We think that's a reasonable expenditure, but obviously it's an expensive one. So we need to ask for your help. If you'll go to actionforlife.org and click on the donate button, it would be greatly appreciated. Now, you can donate once or you can donate each month, and we certainly have viewers who do both. We appreciate that. Please take time now to visit actionforlife.org and click on the donate button. Thank you so much for your support, and may God bless you always.
Ladies and gentlemen, we hear a lot today about society redistributing the goods of the people who work for those goods. We are called to work. Jesus was a worker himself. He was a carpenter. The apostles, they worked. They were fishermen. They never thought of themselves as being entitled to anything. As a matter of fact, St. Paul says, I'm a tent maker. I'm not going to impose on anybody. I'm going to work with my own hands. And a lot of people have forgotten that today. We are called to work, to use our natural gifts, to use our talents, to use our minds, and sometimes to use our backs to do the work that is going to provide a living for us and for our families. When we don't work, we diminish ourselves. There's no sense of satisfaction, accomplishment, no sense that we have put our time, our effort, and our sweat into providing for ourselves and for our families. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's think about what that means. It doesn't just simply mean taking a salary. It means providing for ourselves, providing for our families, and thanking Almighty God for all the good things that He has given us, and asking us to co-create with Him with the goods of the earth, and to use our minds to make something wonderful for ourselves, for our family, and for our country. Hi folks, over the weeks you have become more and more familiar with our program, Conversations with Father Orsi. I know that you are enjoying the programs because you tell me that you do. I want you to be sure that you should never worry about missing an episode, because you can go to actionforlife.org and catch all of the episodes that we have produced over the last year. Now, also, extra added bonus, you can listen, watch my homilies, my weekly homilies about the Sunday readings. That's also on actionforlife.org. Lastly, both of these adventures, conversations and the homilies, they cost money. And I'm going to have to ask you if you can help us out, because so many of you tell me how much you enjoy the program. Some people tell me our Sunday wouldn't be the same. We record the program, we watch them during the week. This is an expensive enterprise, and we think it's an important way to get out the gospel message and to talk about those issues of the day that are important to us as Christians. So please go to your website, actionforlife.org. There is a button you can click for donations, and please, please be generous to us to keep this show on the air. Your Sundays will not be the same without it.
Welcome back to a conversation with Father Orsi on BC Cloutier. The whole show we've been talking about synodality, Father,
Right.
but you touched on Vatican II,
Right.
which occurred when I was, probably 11, 12 years old. I was in Catholic school, and it was called the Ecumenical Council.
Right.
They didn't explain to us that it was not the first ecumenical council, and since then it's become known as Vatican II. What I'm curious about is, let's see, you were already in the priesthood by then.
Oh, you're not my friend.
Just kidding. You weren't even in seminary yet, were you?
No. So that happened began in 62. It opened in 62. So I
went on for how long? Just a couple of years, wasn't it?
62 to 66, I believe.
4 years. So obviously there were a lot of decisions proposed in that council. Mm-hmm. Do we know how many were implemented, or how many it was John the 23rd, if I recall,
right.
at that time? How many that he, put on the side?
I don't know how many he put on the side. We know one for sure that he put on the side. It was the discussion of, I beg your pardon, Paul VI put the one on birth control on the side. I believe the council wanted to discuss it, and he says, no, I will address that myself. And he did. Now, you can certainly go online and look at the documents of Vatican II, the Church in the Modern World. You can look at the documents on ecumenism. You can look on the documents on Christ. Beautiful, outstanding, beautiful documents on ecumenism. Did I say ecumenism already? But they were in there, and those are the ones that the council, the council promoted, and then the Pope approved, and those are the documents of Vatican II.
It was a big shakeup.
It was.
I mean, turn the altar around and remove the communion rail, and
well, let's go a step back on that. You could look at the documents of Vatican II, and there is Sancto Cilium Concilii, this Holy Council, and it talks about the liturgy. It says the liturgy should be updated. Sacro Sanctum Concilii. The liturgy should be updated. Now, I don't know if the Council Fathers expected it to be as updated as it is now. Certainly, Paul VI, being Pope, he had the authority to change the rite. Mm-hmm. But when you look at the document said you should maintain the Latin. It looked to me that they were talking about a slight updating of the liturgy. It became much different than what I think the fathers anticipated. But that's the Pope's business, not mine.
That's interesting. I mean, I remember as a kid, the nuns, God bless them, the Sisters of Mercy, thought that much that came of Vatican II was, I guess you could use the word radical. That they were taken aback by how many changes were occurring in a very rapid period of time in an institution that normally doesn't change very rapidly.
Right. My opinion is that some people took advantage of the documents and changed them a lot more radically than the council had intended them to be changed. But again, we have to follow the direction of the Vatican. You mentioned something like the turning around of the altar, taking down altar rails. Well, I don't think that's in there, taking down the altar rails. And it says you need a freestanding altar. And therefore, people could interpret it as saying, well, you could say Mass either way. And that seems to be what I garnered from Vatican II, although, as it has been interpreted, for the most part, Mass is now celebrated facing the people. So there's a lot in there that has kind of grown over the years.
Interesting. Well, I think it's a good thing that I do remember as a kid with the priest facing the altar. So the priest, we looked at the priest's back.
Right.
and the Mass was said in Latin, it was a little difficult to follow along. Now, as a little kid, it's a little difficult to follow along anyway, right? But, in subsequent years, Gina and I have gone to Latin Masses, and I still think it's very difficult.
Well, it's a different way of worshiping.
Yes.
It's a different way of worshiping, and you really have to get into it. It's a very, I do go to the traditional Mass from time to time, and you can find yourself engaged on a different level. It's a very spiritual experience because maybe you don't understand the gospel. Maybe you don't understand the epistle in the Latin, but there's a missal for that. But you do get a sense that something very unique, something very special, something very holy is going on.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. So I think that, we have to have that opportunity for people to worship in a way that does their spiritual life the best.
Well, and it's really no different than, I've been in foreign countries and the Mass is said in the native language.
Right.
And that's hard to follow along too.
Right.
Although I do find that I can mentally say it in English while they're saying it in, Spanish or Catalan or whatever.
Yeah. But I remember there always be the story about, the old ladies sitting in church saying their rosary while they're attending Mass. Well, the little old ladies had a pretty good sense of theology. They were uniting themselves to God in their way and through the Mass that was in Latin. They were distant from the priest, but they had a sense of what was going on. It helped them to become holy.
It's interesting you should say that because, as you know, at St. Agnes, there is a group of people that say the Rosary before morning Mass. And I have come into the church while Rosary is in process and knelt and said my prayers. Well, the background is people reciting the Rosary as I'm praying to God. And it is a really unique spiritual experience.
There's a rhythm.
Yeah.
There's a rhythm to it. Yeah, it's a beautiful rhythm. I want to go back earlier. We talked about the teaching church and the listening church. I want to be clear with these terms. Docens means the teaching church. And for, a long time, people said the church only teaches, you just hand down pronouncements. Ecclesia decens means the speaking church. That means that the church, this is what this idea of synodality means, is now speaking, and the authority structures in the church, the bishops and pope, are listening to what the people have to say. Right? I said earlier, one of the concerns is that what is going to be the end result? The pope makes that decision, but synods, they want them to be an ongoing thing. So if you establish, local synods, they become an ongoing thing. And then we've had synods, as I said, John Paul had synods that address certain issues in the church. Question is, what is the philosophy behind a synod? And it would seem to me that it's a process philosophy. And the good of the synod is not the end result, but it is an ongoing process. And that's what people would say, well, that's the good of the whole thing. It's process. Now, that's nice, I think, but there has to come a point where you say, well, wait a minute, we've talked long enough. This is what it's, right. We've had this discussion, it comes to a point where you say, no, this is it. And I think, one of the things that's been coming up again and again is women deacons. And it gets put up for discussion again and again and again. I am told that it's not one of those things that the Pope once discussed. I'm told. But if you have a synod and you're supposed to be listening, well, why not? And, what does the Pope do with it then? Because he's assigned another committee to investigate it. And we've had numerous committees, and we can find no grounds for women deacons, sacramental deacons. In the early church, you had women deacons who, and there's plenty of literature to attest to this, that aided in the baptism ritual of women when women would have to undress and be immersed in a pool of water. So that seems to have been the extent of deacons in the ancient church, but I don't see a basis for women deacons in Scripture or in the tradition.
So that's one of many issues that revolves around synodality.
Yeah, I'm sure that's going to be one of the issues. Whether or not it was discussed, I don't know, maybe. Pope has assigned a committee to discuss it. If you have smaller synods in different areas and they decide we want to do this, you could end up, having a schism in the church that, people break off. Well, we do this in Germany, but we don't do this in Poland.
Germany's pretty close to that, aren't they?
In my humble opinion, very dangerous.
I mean, I'm reading that there are two factions that both seem to have a lot of sway, and we'll see what happens. But I assume there must be a synod that is discussing the dearth of priests that exists.
Yeah, well, I think it's an issue that is being discussed. John Paul II, was very concerned about the priesthood. How do we get new members into the priesthood? How do we educate priests? These things have been, ongoing discussions. Of course, I suppose it's according to the part of the world that you in. The Western world, there is a small number of vocations. If you go to Africa, the seminaries are bursting. So.
Well, and that shows you what mission work will do.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Because that's from 20, 30, 40 years ago that they're bearing fruit.
Right.
Well, Father, this has been an interesting discussion. I'm still not sure I'm fully conversant on synodality, but you have certainly shed a lot of light on it. So thank you so much.
I hope so. I'm doing the best I can.
Join us again next week for a conversation with Father Orsi. Until then, I'm BC Cloutier. Have a great week and God bless.